Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Mansoni. In today's news hour, we'll be discussing the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. Here there is a news about money laundering. What is money laundering? It is the act of showing the illegal money earned as if it is earned by legal means. For example, there is a money earned through black money, the money on which the taxes are not paid, or money earned from illegal activities like drug trade, weapon trafficking, and other illegal activities. If you try to show this tainted money, this tainted illegal money, as if it is untainted, that is, it is earned from a legal source, that is called as money laundering. And under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, involving in money laundering, helping the people involving in money laundering, and associating yourself with the money laundering will invite punishment. To take an example, you have illegal money earned through, say, drug trafficking. If you try to show that you have earned this money through a legal activity like agriculture or a business activity, that activity, that process is called as money laundering. It could be done through various ways. One of the ways is structuring. That is, if you deposit small amounts of cash into the bank accounts instead of a lump sum deposit, then it is difficult for the government agencies to know. It won't give any suspicion. So by depositing small amounts of cash, you could launder the money. You would note that after the demonetization, there were reports that Jandan accounts were used for money laundering because the people having Jandan accounts to deposit small amounts of cash up to 5 lakhs into their accounts so that the government won't get suspicion. That is one way of money laundering. Another way of money laundering is through round tripping. If you take your illegal money to some other country, tax-free country like Seychelles, Mauritius, make a shell company there and invest back through that shell company into the Indian stock market legally, it is round tripping. It is going to a trip to another country from there as if the money is coming into the Indian market. So here you are converting the illegal money into the legal money by round tripping it through another country. You are covering your tracks and you are going through another country and coming as if the money is legal money. That is one way of money laundering. The other way is shell companies. You make companies on paper and you show activities so that you can evade the taxes through those companies. These are all the acts of money laundering. And under the Money Laundering Act 2002, the adjudicating authority gets the power of a civil court. It can call people, take evidence from them, start inquiries, and there are provisions for attaching the assets. If the ED feels that the particular assets are the assets related to money laundering, they can provisionally launch the assets. And if it is proved that those assets relate to the money laundering case, then the assets will be taken over by the central government. They would be confiscated. If it is not proved that they are related to the money laundering case, then the people concerned would apply for the tribunal and they can get back their assets. And all the appeals against the adjudicating authority lie in the High Court. And there are also provision for vexatious prosecution. Say, if you feel that the government agencies are simply trying to harass you by filing fake money laundering case, and the government cannot have any case against you, they can't prove anything against you, you can file a case against the government when the authorities have done search and seizure without any written process. There has to be certain process followed for the search and seizure under the Money Laundering Act. If the authorities without the written reasons, without following the due process, have done search and seizure, you can file a case against them and they would also be prosecuted. This is the protection given to people under the Money Laundering Act to make sure that the act is not misused. In the editorial page, turning to trade winds. In the previous news, we have discussed about the India UAE FTA agreements. Here, the editorial talks in general about how India needs to strengthen its trade ties with the existing partners by reducing the tariffs on certain goods so that those countries will give us favorable access to trade in that country, which will help our exports, because the trade agreements are mutual. Only when you give them some concessions, they will also give you some concessions. It is like give and take. So at that time we can increase the exports in those projects which are we are good in production and thus earn foreign exchange. And earlier the Indian government used to mainly depend on multilateral pacts for trade negotiations. Now the government has changed its stance and it is going for bilateral free trade agreements, which is a good thing because now we can deal country specific and the purpose specific. Every deal with a country would be based on different terms of negotiation, so that would help us more. And the benefit with having free FTA with UAE is that UAE is third largest trading partner with India, and in 2019-20 the trade was around $59 billion. Now both the countries have a target to increase the trade to $100 billion in the next 5 years, and the details of the trade pact are not yet finalized, just the agreement has been signed and the main provisions have been identified. But it is expected to be that the textile industry and the jewel industry of India would going to be benefited from this. And the other beneficial thing would be the two-way flow of remittances and money, because major Indians work in the Gulf countries and they would be sending back money to India through remittances. And now Indian investors are also trying to invest in the UAE, so this will help both the countries and businesses. This article budget lacks the power to transform services. We don't need to go too much into the details. The article basically talks about the allocation for schemes like health and education in the budget have reduced in certain aspects and increased in certain aspects. But we need to know that renewable energy is very important, whether it is for the healthcare sector or the education sector. Without renewable energy and the access to power, even those schemes which put conditions that there should be regular access to power, the schemes under these services would lose the benefits because of no continuous access to power. And it is a well-known fact that availability of reliable electricity would improve the delivery of services in both the health and education sector. And almost 75% of the target in the sustainable development goals, that is the SDGs, they are linked to universal access to reliable energy, continuous access to electricity. And despite all this, around 44% of the schools in India and around 25% of the health sub-centers in India and the primary health centers, they are not electrified. They don't have access to continuous electricity. And many development projects that the government gives, it puts a condition that one of the requisite for the grant would be that there should be access to reliable electricity, because without electricity you can't do anything. And even though the budget has allocations, the main thing when it comes to a policy being successful is the implementation part. So apart from the budgetary allocation, we need to reform the institutional structures, the financing mechanisms, and the information and the coordination is very important for any scheme to be successful. This article talks in a general way, so you can skip all the details and just know the basic idea behind it. In this news, we just need to know that the Security Printing and Minting Corporation of India, it is responsible for manufacture and production of currency and banknotes, security paper, non-judicial stamp paper, postal stamps, stationery, passport and visa stickers, and security inks that is used by the government, commemorative coins and others. And if the government feels that any place which is important for the national security, that particular place could be declared as prohibited place under the Official Secrets Act. Here the Security Printing and Minting Corporation's headquarters in Delhi has been declared as prohibited place because of the nature of information that is being transacted there, the important information, the decisions about the financial health of the nation. So it is declared as a prohibited place so that the access to the place would be restricted. Too many people won't be allowed, the security would be increased, which is vital for the security of the nation. We have already discussed about money laundering, and money laundering is a global problem because of the interconnected nature and the globalization of the world. A crime syndicate in one country could be operating in another country, and it would all be related. Because of this, to avoid the money laundering, various measures has been taken even by the international community. For example, we have the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, which regularly scrutinizes the countries on the steps they have taken for reducing the money laundering, and they put countries in various lists called grey list, blacklist, etc., which would impact the financing options of those particular country. Inflation has peaked, focus is on growth. By now you would have observed that most of the news is repetitive in nature. We have discussed about how the rural consumption is low and how the RBI has gone for accommodative stance again. When the RBI feels that it is still time for the economy to pick up on the growth, there is scope for reducing the inflation in future. So for that they have put the accommodative stance even now. And we also have discussed about how the Russia and Ukraine conflict will affect the oil prices, and it would have an impact on the crude oil imports in India because almost 80% of the oil needs by India are imported. They are made through the imports. So any price rise in the oil needs would have a direct impact on the Indian economy. We just need to read the headlines here and skip the details because we have discussed the topic about central bank digital currency and RBI stance on cryptocurrency. We don't need to read this news. Again, headlines here and don't need to go through the details. Understanding the Draft India Data Accessibility and Use Policy 2022. Currently, data is a new oil. Everything revolves around data. So the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology recently has come up with a draft policy called the Draft India Data Accessibility and Use Policy 2022. What is the aim of this policy? This policy wants to transform the way we access the public sector data in India. This policy would also allow the licensing and sale of public data generated by the government to the private sector so that the private sector would use the data and come up with new businesses. and what are the provisions under the policy. In the previous economic survey of 2019, in the chapter 4, there was a discussion about exploiting data for commercial purpose. Data as the new oil, because now everything is data driven and we have certain bottlenecks in sharing the data. Because if you look at the data, certain data collected by the government department, different data would be at with different departments. A particular department would not have access to the data with other department. And if we have access to data, we can take meaningful decisions based on the statistics. And there is absence of technical tools and there are no particular standards, because a particular department would follow a data in a particular format and table, some other department would follow and have the data in some other format. So we can't compare both the formats unless the data is properly arranged. That is why the government has come up with this new policy wherein the inter-department sharing of data also would be happening in an easy manner. What are the goals of this data policy? The policy would be applicable to all the data that and the information that is generated, collected by the central government, and it also allows the state governments to adopt its provision. The government would also set up the India Data Office under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology for the overall management of the public data. And each government entity would have a chief data officer. And India Data Council, which will be a consultation body, would also be set up. And what is the strategy of the government under this data policy? They would in general keep the government data open by default, and they would maintain negative lists of data sets which cannot be shared. Certain sensitive data would be disallowed. This is like saying in general the data is allowed, but certain part of the data which is sensitive won't be allowed. And as we discussed, the data would be stored in different formats. So for that it needs the enriching of data and processing so that the data would be easily accessed in preferred format by everyone. And this data would be freely shared with the other government departments so that the decision making could be based on data. And this data would be licensed to private sector at a fees by the government, so that the private sector would also get benefited from the data that is shared. And what is the benefit of such data sharing? If you want to take a survey, it will involve certain cost. Now that the government has already incurred cost on surveying and collecting the data, if the data is made available to other departments and the private sector at a license fee, so it would avoid the duplication of effect, and the cost of collecting the data would be less. We are already using the data that we have collected for economic gains. That is the purpose behind it. But it has certain issues. What are those? The main being the privacy issue. India currently does not have a data protection law. And what happens if there are some privacy violations? Who will respond to the breach in the data? So that question is undecided. And even the interdepartmental data sharing process is open. Even if the government keeps anonymous and sensitizes the data, for example, certain sensitive information and personal information like the name, then the address, even if all that would be removed from the data set, there would be other information related, and every department would get access to different data set. If all the departments put together data, we could have a profile of a person, 360-degree profile of a person, because the data would be distributed in bits and pieces. It would be accessed by different departments, and if we can, using a certain software, if we can put all the data together, then we can get the profile of the people, and this could be used by the government for mass surveillance. That is one of the negative points. And even if the anonymization of data happens, the personal details are removed, there has to be some accountability, there has to be some independent regulatory oversight so that the misuse of the data doesn't happen. And there is a saying that if you are getting a internet service for free, then you are the product, because the people giving that service, they are using your information, your browsing history, so that they can provide you the target ads. Same with the case, if the private sector is going to pay for the data, the value of the data increases with the more personal information the data has, because they could use it for advertising and their business prospects. So this is again a concern. And what are the other issues involved with the policy? The policy talks about transparency of the government, but it doesn't talk anything about the accountability of the government and how the government would address the situation if some problem arises. And the policy bypasses the parliament lawmaking because it incurs large amount of public funds to enrich the data, as we have previously discussed about the formats. So it requires enrichment of data, it requires compilation of data, data sharing, the costs on servers. So a law should have been passed in the parliament for all of this, but through a policy, now directly a department is getting that, which would incur heavy public funds. And the last question is the question of federalism. The policy says that states are free to adopt such provisions which are allowed by the central government. But what if the central government makes a format that the states have to follow a particular format in collecting the data, and there is no clarity about uh, who would be sharing the proceeds of the sale of data, because does the central government share the revenue with the state governments? There is no clarity in the policy. Those are the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.